Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We are live at Mother Earth News Fair, and I'm saying now because we're live on Facebook right now for people that could not be here live in person. Hello, everyone. Thank you for hanging in there. It's Sunday afternoon. We've all been through a million workshops and a million booths and probably have learned so much, I hope, this weekend and have been inspired to do so many great things. I'm seeing familiar faces here. I think I have groupies. We should have a VIP line for the groupies for Janet McKee. Hi everyone, and for those of you that don't know me, I'm Janet McKee. I'm a wellness expert, speaker, and author, and founder of Sauna View. Sauna is Latin for health and wellness, so I am passionate about inspiring and teaching you ways to advance your life, to a life that you deserve, that you want. We've got somebody beeping a horn over here who I think they agree with what I have to say. Right? A life that's healthier, happier, more energy, more vitality. How about a life that's richer? Richer in abundance of everything. You know, money, just a rich life. And those of you that have been coming to my talks, you know that I've been teaching people for many years on ways to improve their lives. And simple, common sense ways, right? Living within the rhythms of Mother Nature. But as I've been doing that, I also became inspired to start an organic farm. And that came from my father, who was born and raised in a poor farm town. You've heard me talk about this, right, some of you? As growing up, I was told he was so poor, living off the land. Well, I mentioned that now at the beginning of this presentation because I didn't see poor at all when I got to visit his town. I saw rich. They lived a very rich life. Simple, but rich. They lived off the land, they grew their own food, they helped each other in the community, taking turns on each other's farms. They breathed fresh air, they moved their bodies. Not to mention the view from the top of the mountain is worth $1 million, but very rich life. And I guess it got in my blood. And at my advanced age, decided a few years ago to start an organic farm. I wanted to experience that, to experience what it was like to grow your own food and to enjoy that food all throughout the year, which I taught that yesterday. And I am, by the way, would you be so kind to grab the mailing list so I don't have to climb down again from the stage? Thank you, sir. Please do, if you haven't already, please sign my list. We are part nonprofit. We will not spam you. And we don't share your email with anybody, but I am going to share with you lots of free information. All of the notes and information that I've been teaching all weekend. And I'm also going to send to you a series of new videos that I recorded earlier this year, teaching you ways to live a more triumphant life and to help you live a better life. And also, somebody will win, actually a few people will win in a raffle, a free stay getaway at our farm for a weekend. So, might be worth signing the sheet. And for those who can't attend the Mother Earth News Fair, we are recording on my new, I have several Facebook pages, but we have a brand new one, the Janet McKee Fan Public Figure Facebook page, because my publisher is about to release 2 books from me. One, I'm a contributing author with a multi-best-selling author, and that comes out this October, but then my own full book comes out in the spring. And that's in addition to my little recipe book, which is available at my booth, 2007, that I've been providing for years here at Mother Earth. And they asked me, so my publisher asked me to put together a new public figure Facebook page, which was brand new, and so from that, we are recording this. And we recorded all 3 of my talks this weekend. And they are there for you. If you have Facebook, do get on there. Friday was how to grow your own sprouts, microgreens, and wheatgrass. Yesterday was how to eat from your garden all year, including how to extend your growing season. And then today is how to grow early heirloom tomatoes, which is a very specific aspect of extending the growing season, right? That's what this is all about. So some of you, let me just mention, I just appreciate so much you being here at the Mother News Fair and coming to my talk. Is everyone enjoying themselves? Like, have you ever been just surrounded by so many like-minded people? And it's not just like-minded. What I have found here from every person I've met thousands of you this weekend, everyone is so kind and so generous and thoughtful and down to earth. And that is what we need more on Mother Earth, don't we? Or people like you. So thank you for attending and coming. And for those of you that aren't here live, you need to be here next year for the Mother Earth Fair. So as I said, Jenna McKee, wellness expert, speaker, author, and there's a picture of my farm. We do own a historic landmark property. It was designated by the Pittsburgh Historic Landmark Foundation. We're just a few miles from here. As a matter of fact, Seven Springs is a wonderful customer of our produce. And it actually sat vacant for quite a while until I came along. I think everyone was afraid to own a historic landmark, but I was honored to own a historic landmark. And I was honored to work within their guidelines of any work on renovating the buildings. I had to follow what they would consider would be historic significance. And glad to do that. I do teach, and I have been teaching for many years, about how to eat healthy and live healthy to improve your mind and body. And this, unfortunately, is what people are eating, right? Especially our children today. They're not eating real food. And you all know that here. The key to everything, to good health, vitality, good balanced emotions and energy and positivity, you've got to start with good foundation, which is real food, grown naturally, without chemicals. That is the key, right there. If you can do that, your health and vitality will improve 1,000%. And that's what I've been teaching for years, and we all know that here. Real food, not only when we choose that here, we put it here, right? It improves our physical well-being, but also our choices are affecting the environment. And when our choices affect the environment, that also comes back and affects our health and well-being, right? It's circular. So it really makes you think about spending that little bit of extra money to buy organic over conventional. And trust me, I have a new respect for the organic farmer. Is anybody here doing commercial farming? Or are you all home gardeners? Okay.
Very small.
We're very small.
Okay, all right. Yes.
Very small,
Yes.
but a lot of work, right? And that's what I found. So much work growing organic. You can't just spray chemicals to kill the weeds and the pests. You're down there with your hands and knees. And you know what hands and knees are? Labor. And you need a lot of labor then if you try to grow more. And labor is expensive. So growing organic. But you know that choice is really good for you, your physical well-being, but it's good for Mother Earth. And what's good for Mother Earth is good for you. And that's what we need to keep considering. So whatever else people are spending their money on, and it's not the people here because you guys all get it, but the people on Facebook, right, that aren't here, hopefully they get that. Support the organic farmer because we need that for Mother Earth. And when you can, buy local, buy fresh. And I spoke about how important that is for your health and well-being. Because food that is not grown locally travels thousands of miles to get to you. And what that means is it's picked before it's ripe. And when food is picked before it's ripe, because they know it's going to travel 2,000 miles to get to you, it doesn't have the opportunity to develop all of the nutrient content that food is supposed to have. Did you ever know that? Right? We think that we're protecting the produce by picking it unripe because it's harder and it can travel, but it's not getting the nutrients that it needs. So that's why when you pick out of your garden or buy from your local farmer, then it hasn't traveled as far, and hopefully you're getting it right, and when it's picked right, and develop the nutrients. And of course the flavor, right? Did you ever taste a tomato in January that came from another continent? What does it taste like? Nothing. Plastic. Yes. So this is why when we are choosing our seeds to order in December and January, my farm manager and I, we're like salivating because we're thinking about, we're dreaming about the first tomato sandwich that we're going to have in season. And it is that dream The desire for that juicy flavor that drove us to learn how to grow early heirloom tomatoes. That's why you're here today, early. We are in the Laurel Mountains. This is ski country for Western Pennsylvania. Hills for those of you who are from out west, okay, but we're here at ski country. The usual farmer or gardener in this part of the world will harvest their tomatoes in August. Everybody? Okay. We have figured out how to harvest fresh, organic, heirloom tomatoes with incredible flavor, incredible nutrients in late June. And we're a small, young farm. We make lots of mistakes. For those of you that came to my farm Friday morning with Mother Earth News, we taught a workshop there, and came to my talk yesterday, you heard about all of our mistakes that we have learned from, and hopefully I've shared with you, and you will not make those same mistakes. Like we tried to do cold frames in our windy farm, that didn't work, and then we tried to heat a greenhouse. That was a disaster. But we still figured out how to do early tomatoes. And I'm going to share that with you today. So I told you about the farm my father grew up on in Italy, a little poor farm town. It's in such a small town, the name isn't even on any maps. And that's a picture from the top of the mountain. I told you it was worth $1 million. There's a picture of my Nonna sitting in her kitchen in Italy many, many years ago. And actually, that's the cover of her book. She wrote her memoirs in Italian, and my cousin translated to English, and the book is called Such is Life. My Nonna came to this country after her husband, my grandfather, was a prisoner of war in this country, in California. He was treated so well as a prisoner of war, he called for his family. He said, we've got to live in this country. Isn't that interesting? I just find that fascinating. I think he ate better as a prisoner in this country than he did, you know, I don't know, on other travels that he was on. So he called for his family, and my Nonna came. My Nonna never learned how to speak English, and I was never taught Italian. I'm trying to learn now. Because my father was treated very poorly as an immigrant, and he wanted us to be very American. So my Nonna and I used to spend time together in the kitchen cooking, and that's how we would communicate with each other. And I'm so honored to tell you that we have my Nonna's heirloom tomato sauce. We have samples at our booth in 2007, and we do have jars available to you. My Nonna taught me how to make her very unique fresh sauce. Number one, in the old country, they didn't waste anything. They didn't remove the skins and the seeds and do all this craziness. They took the core, the stem off, but they threw the whole tomato in there. And what's also interesting is she didn't cook it for hours and hours and cook it down. She would simmer it for 20 to 30 minutes. Complete opposite of how you typically do tomato sauce if you read the instructions. Okay? And guess what? When people taste our tomato sauce and they take a jar home, they then call me a week later and say, I need a case of it. Because they can't believe how fresh and wonderful it tastes. So what's going on here? What's going on is, number one, we're growing heirloom tomatoes. They have flavor. Number two, we're picking them when they're ripe, not before. So all the nutrient content, all the flavor, right? That's why my farm manager is known by all the high-end chefs in the area for the best heirloom tomatoes. So I'm going to teach you today. And then we have our own basil and garlic in the sauce. And I cooked it exactly how she taught me many years ago. So in the middle of the winter, I get to open a jar that has flavor as if it's fresh from the summertime. Very different. And that is what makes us all worthwhile. All of this hard work, all of this. People say to me, Jenna, why do you go to all this trouble? You go to Whole Foods and for $2.98 buy a jar of their organic tomato basil sauce. It's like, yeah, but there's something so rewarding about opening my own jar of sauce in the middle of the winter. That I worked so hard, my team did, and I, to grow the tomatoes. And then we made the sauce and jarred the sauce. So much love is put into this. That's a secret ingredient, by the way. We'll have to add that to the amendments, the soil amendments that I teach you about. A little bit of love in there, okay? We'll talk about that. So here's our farm, 52 acres, just some pictures of the farm. The historic barn and bunkhouse We got introduced to these beautiful, amazing Amish carpenters that drove 3 hours every day to come and work on our barn because they loved our barn so much. And we completely renovated it with the same type of wood that was on originally, and we're letting it gray like it did traditionally. Our farmhouse is actually a log cabin, and little by little we're exposing the logs one side at a time, and we can completely restore it to the log cabin look. We have a spring house on the farm, and that houses the spring water. The entire farm is fed by spring water, and it goes into a 2,000-gallon holding tank that I put in, and through multiple filters in the basement of the spring house, and one is a UV filter. We don't use any chemicals on our farm. So it is possible, I have to admit, and I'm sorry, that some of our produce tastes particularly good, and especially our heirloom tomatoes. It might be because of the spring water also. So get the best quality water that you can to water your gardens, or try to put a filter on it. So that's an image of the spring house, bunkhouse, and barn. And there's our fields that go to the mountain. There's one of our greenhouses, and there's stuff growing in the field, the beautiful blue sky. There's a huge pond in the back of our property that's fed by a natural stream. You can go fishing or swimming. So please come visit our farm and come stay in one of our cabins. On the farm, when I bought it, there are wildflowers and wild strawberries and wild black raspberries. And also we have some honeybees that are rescued. Our beekeeper is a honeybee rescue, and they gather the bees when they're somewhere they shouldn't be, safely capture them, and put them in hives all throughout western Pennsylvania, and some of them are on our farm. There's one of our original gardens where we had irrigation. There's our farm manager, Kevin. He's the great-great-grandson of the man that farmed the land back in the 1800s. How lucky am I to have him as our farm manager? He loves the farm as much as I do. And you guys have seen this before, a picture of him holding red runner beans. I always show this picture because the picture means so much to me. Because when you look at this, you see these rugged hands of a hard-working man holding beans with so much love and pride. Did you see that? It's like that's just everything. So we grow lots of greens, lettuces. We do, that's a funny carrot that we picked once. There's two white satin carrots that were twisted together in love. I think they're supposed to come out like that. I think there's something wrong when they do, but they look like they were in love. We thought that was sweet. And we did patty pan squash. We did baby fennel. Some of the chefs like baby fennel and ground cherries. We do like to do unique things. We do Lady Godiva pumpkins that gives us those green pumpkin seeds, the hulless pumpkin seeds. They're complete protein, by the way. They're excellent for you. And, of course, our microgreens and our heirloom tomatoes. This is a picture of one we really love. I called it yesterday sunset bumblebee, and I looked it up today. It's sunrise bumblebee. I had the wrong time of day. Sunrise bumblebees, I think, are the most delicious cherry tomatoes that I have had. Now, I understand sun gold are also excellent. Does anybody grow sun gold? I hear they're good, are they? I think we've done them 1 year. What we love about this sunrise bumblebee is it has these beautiful little stripes on them. Okay, so they look cool, and the chefs love that. They look so beautiful on a plate and mixed in with other cherry tomatoes. But what we really love about this tomato is it's so sweet, and the skin is so tender. They are delicious, and they grow really easily and really wonderful. So we like to do heirloom everything on tomatoes. Heirloom cherry, heirloom Roma plum style, heirloom large tomatoes, right? So we pick a variety of the heirlooms across all the different types of tomatoes. That's what we like to do in our farm. And what I'm showing you here is Cherokee purple is on your right, and these are indigo apple. Indigo apple is pretty cool because they come out like dark purple at first, and then little by little they turn more red and purple. And is everyone familiar with Cherokee purple? They're actually greenish brown on top, and then red on the bottom. When you cut in, they're deep, deep red. I think they're some of the best flavors too, but the indigo apple is one of my favorite also. We'll do like German Johnson, and then we do some orange and yellows, and brandy wine comes in different colors. We don't do too many different varieties because we found ones that we really have success with and we love. But there are many experts out there that do heirloom tomatoes that use other varieties as well. And as a matter of fact, how we learn how to do our heirloom tomatoes is I took a class from, is it Wagon, they call themselves? It's actually a woman's agricultural network. And being a woman farmer, I get to go to those. And it was cool because I took a workshop from someone that did heirloom tomatoes. I will have to email you out. Oh, here they are. They grow, this particular organization, they grow brandywine and Cherokee purple like we do. They also grow pineapple tomatoes. And they are quite sweet. Those are delicious. I have had those. Rose de Bern, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Speckled Roman is one that they like to grow also. And Sutton White. It's obviously a white tomato. That's kind of interesting. So those are just some other heirloom tomatoes that another heirloom grower grows, and I'm going to share that with you. So we grow, as I said, we grow ours with love, and so sometimes they come out shaped like a heart. And I don't think they're supposed to. I think there's something wrong again when that happens, but that's what occurs sometimes at our farm. So the way we do early is we definitely take advantage of our greenhouses and our high tunnels. And this is a picture of some greens growing in our pole building greenhouse that we have. But we also have, we tried, and I taught you this yesterday, this is one of our big mistakes. We did try to heat this greenhouse and grow greens like spinach and kale and stuff all winter once, and that was a disaster. That did not go well heating our greenhouse. Because it was a lot of labor, we had a wood-burning stove, and my farm manager put a big metal tank on top with water, and we ran piping around to try to warm the building. So it was a ton of labor. He was getting up every 2 hours putting wood in the wood-burning stove all winter long. That is not fun at all. But still, we did everything we can to heat that greenhouse because we wanted to grow all winter long. But guess what happened? We had a warm, moist building with food in it, and so we had an enormous amount of pests that also were enormous. So not only we had many pests in quantity, but they grew big and ugly and scary. It was not good. And then, because we thought we had to keep the greenhouse closed and tight because it was being heated all winter, you think you're supposed to keep, that we didn't have enough airflow, and then mold developed. So a heated greenhouse is not our answer, and we do not have fun with that at all. And we can't afford to heat with other types of heat because it would be too expensive for us. We're a little poor farm, okay? So we decided to try a hoop house high tunnel. And there's a picture of my farm manager and a local handyman, but we made our first high tunnel, handmade, got metal conduit from Home Depot, bent it, put plastic on top, and had huge success. We grow greens all winter long in an unheated high tunnel here in the mountains. And if anybody wants to learn more about that, I spoke about that yesterday on Friday morning. Contact me and I'll tell you how we do that, but it's brilliant and it works. And so any home gardener, I want you to try that. If you have plastic hoops going over your spinach in your garden at home, try it, it works. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Every layer of the high tunnel takes you a zone south. But even 2 zones south wasn't enough to get us all the way through the winter, but what I learned is spinach in the ground can actually freeze. And when the daylight comes out and it thaws, you can continue to harvest it and it will continue to grow. And spinach grown in the winter here in the mountains is the most delicious spinach you will ever taste. It is fantastic. So I bring this up because we're using our high tunnel to extend our season for growing tomatoes. We had so much success in our little homemade high tunnel that we then got an NRCS grant and developed a huge high tunnel that's even a movable high tunnel. And the movable high tunnel concept is excellent for our tomatoes and peppers and spinach. Right now in our big high tunnel are tomatoes and peppers that love the heat. They love the hot days of the summer in the hot high tunnel, right? Tomatoes and peppers are tropical plants. They actually want heat. So the tomatoes and peppers are in the high tunnel right now during the summer. But as they finish off, and before the season is over, we planted our spinach seeds in a field next to them. When the tomatoes are done, before the frost, we actually pull the high tunnel. It's movable. It's on rails. It's like a sled. Pull it over the spinach, and in the winter, before we cover it before the frost, we have spinach and other greens growing in that high tunnel all winter. Next season, when the spinach is done, next spring, the spinach is finished, we then are going to move our tomatoes and peppers in that high tunnel, which I'm going to explain to you how I do that. The tomatoes and peppers are going to grow in the heat of the summer in the hot high tunnel. They love the heat. End of next summer, we're going to plant spinach in the field over here, and then next fall we move the high tunnel over the spinach. So we only have to move that high tunnel once a year, but we're getting all of this happening. You following me? If you have any questions about that, just let me know. Okay, so we realized in the middle of the winter we are craving these tomato sandwiches. And we wanted to start growing them and harvesting them early. But in our zone, which is zone 5, the normal recommendation is you start peppers 8 to 12 weeks before the last frost, which here, the last frost is the end of May. So that takes you March, April, when you can start your peppers. And tomatoes are 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost, so that takes you April. You're starting your tomatoes. Okay, so those of you that do home gardening, you're probably starting your tomatoes around April. Because you don't want them too early to get in the ground in June, if you're from this part of the country. Okay? Well, we don't do that. What we do at Sonneview Farms, we start our peppers in January, and we start our tomatoes in February. So we're months ahead of everyone else. And of course you might be thinking, well then what do you do when they're ready to go? And I'm going to explain to you. So, we plant our seeds. Of course we get organic heirloom tomato seeds from all of the great seed companies that you see here this weekend. And we put them in a good quality soil. Now we buy organic potting mix. Because we are so small, we used to mix our own soil, and we've tried some of these combinations, and if you want to do that, excellent. It is less expensive to mix your own soil if you don't have to pay labor. At our farm, it was too labor intensive because we do so much that we decided we're just buying potting mix. And we get it, of course we get it at wholesale price in large quantities from the local. But these are some examples of local farms that do their own mix and what they include in their mix. And just so you know, if you sign to my mailing list, I will be sending you this information out too, if you miss anything that you're writing down. But you must have your email that I can read on my list to do that. And I'm going to send you the notes from all my talks this weekend. Okay? So what you need, and you might know this if you're a gardener, what you need to start seeds is good soil temperature, good air temperature, water. Okay? And so what you need for soil temperature is 75 to 90 degrees. And it's not only for seed starting, it's for transplanting too. So this is where the issue is. If you try to one of your issues, if you try to transplant your tomatoes out into the field too early, because you've got frost still coming, the soil's too cold. So we have figured out, I'm going to show you how we did that to fix that problem. Your air temperature needs to be normal, like household temperature. And this is why we're starting our seedlings indoors. And we're going to talk about that. You're probably doing the same. And of course, the soil should be moist, not too soggy when you plant your seeds. And then once you get your seeds in your little seedling trays, is what we use. I understand some people are using soil blocks. Is anybody using soil blocks here? Are you finding that's better and more efficient? We might try that. Talk to you after about that. Okay, we get the normal little seedling trays and we stick in those seeds in there, in the moist soil, and then we cover with an empty tray we just put over top. Got to cover. And we water every day just so it's moist, not too soggy, not too, okay, just a little bit, real careful. Sometimes we just spritz water, real gentle little watering can or system. And then we watch until things start to appear. And then we've got these little seedlings, and then we uncover them. And we've got these cute little babies, we call them our babies. And we still want to keep them at first in a soil temperature of 75 to 90 degrees. So we're like at room temperature with our soil. Because then we have them indoors. I'm going to show you. One year we had trays of seedlings, I'm going to show you pictures, with grow lights on shelves in the living room of our farmhouse. And finally we realized that the garage of our farmhouse has an electric heater. We now grow all of our seedlings in the garage of our farmhouse, which is great. It's almost like a little warehouse for us. Air temperature first for these little seedlings is 60 to 70 degrees, good. Again, we keep the soil moist, not too soggy. Eventually, as the seedlings grow, we do recommend bottom water. Because once you start getting these little tomato plants, You want to be really careful with too much moisture because you don't want to start having issues develop with the plants, which I'll talk about. We always have airflow. So whenever we have our seedlings growing, we always have fans and the airflow, because that will prevent some disease from the moisture, being too humid and moist. It also will jostle the stems. Isn't this interesting? And I don't know if you know that. If you have little seedlings and you don't have a lot of airflow, you should actually jostle the trays, and it will strengthen the stem of each of your tomato plants. But since we have fans going, they're already going like this a little bit all day long, which is brilliant because it's natural. It's like a natural, like airflows if they're outside, developing the strength of the stems that they need. And we just use a basic T8 fluorescent light that you can buy from Home Depot or Busy Beaver. You do not need any fancy equipment. Literally. Okay, so just know that. If anybody's trying to sell you some expensive contraption, you don't need it. Okay, I like to teach people it's basic, simple materials is all you need. We get plastic shelving from Walmart or something, or wherever, from Home Depot. We do get our trays from a local grower supply because we buy them in large quantities, our soil, and then we get basic fluorescent lights and start providing light to the seedlings in that manner because we have them inside. Very inexpensive. There's something I want to teach you. So we learned, and I don't know, I don't have the scientific research on this. I didn't compare doing some tomatoes with and without, but we did learn that it was found that if you do chilling off of your seedlings, where first you're growing them and the temperatures I told you, but once, right before, like you have these little seedlings, right before the first true leaves develop, we read that if you move them to a temperature of 52 to 56 degrees roughly, we're not that scientific, we moved them to the basement of the farmhouse. With our grow lights, with the shelves, okay, we have these stages. We have either the living room or the garage. Then when they start to grow, we move them to the basement of the farmhouse because it's about 50-some degrees down there. For 10 to 21 days, roughly, and we're not scientific, so don't worry. If you're like on day 23, it's not the end of the world, okay? We are not that specific. We're busy. We're like running around, pulling our hair out, trying to get everything done on the farm. Do you think we're standing there with a calculator doing it precisely? We're not. And guess what? The tomatoes are hugely successful. So don't stress over all of these details. I just want you to understand the concept. And remember, I am going to send you this information because I want you to have the best heirloom tomatoes early as well. Okay? So this chilling off, they found, created tomato plants that had bigger production. Isn't that interesting? So we did that, and we have incredible production. Like the production is so much, sometimes we barely can keep up with it. So we do not have a production issue, and we think it might be because of all of these steps we're taking, but also this chilling off concept. You may not have a place that has 50 degrees, roughly, in the winter. I don't know. Maybe your garage, if it's unheated or something like that. It's something to play around with if you want. And then we get ready. As soon as the first true leaves start to develop, we move them into 4-inch pots. So let me show you some pictures of this. So this is in the farmhouse living room one year, right? All of our seedlings on trays with grow lights. You see that? How simple. We hang the fluorescent lights over, underneath each shelf and have the seedlings growing. This is middle of the winter. And it's so interesting because even my own father, who came from the farm town in Italy, says, you can't do that, Janet. You can't start, you're too early. You can't start your tomatoes and peppers now. No, you can't do it. And every year we do it, and every year I show him, he's like, okay. He's almost like, going, understand. Here's moved into the garage, right? All along the garage walls, all these grow lights and seedlings going like crazy. And let me mention something else. You want to know another secret? Our farm manager's a good old country guy, grew up here in the mountains. He calls them his babies. He speaks to them every day. He plays music on a radio in where the seedlings are growing all the time. We heard that classical music is the best, but our seedlings are Steelers fans. Luckily, they don't die out of stress from watching the Steelers play. Okay, see, sometimes the sports channels on. I'm like, what are you doing? That can't be good for the Saints. But it's true. As a matter of fact, one year we had a volunteer in our fields. He would every morning at 7 a.m. walk the fields and play a singing bowl and play music to our produce. And I'm telling you, we had some of the most incredible produce that year. So I think, actually, Dominic is here somewhere helping someone at the table. Yes. Do I what for hours? No. The grow lights, that's a good question. Our microgreens stay on for 19 hours a day. We have them on timers, so no labor involved. And I think Kevin, that's a really good question. I'm going to email you. I think Kevin is also doing our tomatoes for about that long, but they still need to rest at night. You do not leave them on 24 hours. That would be very bad for your plants. Your plants actually need to rest in dark. So I would do maybe 14, does anybody know? 14 to 16 hours maybe for the grow lights. 12 to 14 you're doing? Microgreens I think we're doing longer because we want faster production out of them. And they're not, because you clip them at 10 days, they're not as sensitive as something like a tomato plant that we want to be really healthy. 12 to 14 hours, excellent. I appreciate that. But we have little timers. We also bought at Home Depot at the outlets. And we have these, the plug strips, everything's plugged in, and it has a timer connected to it. And it turns on in the morning, and it turns off in the evening, right at the times we want. So simple. Simple. Okay, so now we're getting ready to transplant. And the first time, out of the seedlings, once we get the first 2 leaves, we move them into 4-inch pots. And you probably do that too. Get them a little bit bigger in the 4-inch pots. Moisten the seedling tray before you pull them out. Moisten the soil that's going into the 4-inch pot. You probably already know this. I just want to make sure everybody that's new, you know that. It's nice to have the soil moist, not sopping wet, just lightly moist. And again, we're now back to moving them to nice temperatures. 75, we're past that 21 days. And air temperature, 67 degrees. Once they get in those 4-inch pots and we got some roots developing, we do bottom watering. So what we have are these clear trays. They call them domes. They don't have any holes in them. And we stick the 4-inch pots into these trays that don't have holes. And then we just stick water in that tray. And that also saves labor than watering each little pot, right? So you put water in the bottom of the tray and you get bottom watering. And it gives a healthier environment for the tomatoes. And again, we got the fans going. We have airflow all the time. If you don't have that, which I recommend, do remember to keep jostling. And then you can do that when you water. As you pull your tray out, just shake it a little. Get that jostling going so the stems are nice and strong. Just like muscle. You need to move muscle for it to get stronger. You're kind of doing that with your tomato plant. And we keep on the fluorescent lights going on the tomatoes in 4-inch pots. There they are. Make sure you label everything. And will you please tell my farm team to do that? It never fails, though. They start to label, and then as they move things around, and they move things, the labels get lost, and then we're like, well, what is this? We don't know. It's like, okay, we'll have to wait till we're harvesting to know what it is. But it's nice to label. It's nice to put dates, because you might want to do sequential planting also, if you have time and if you have space. Because remember, you don't know if everything's going to survive, right? And especially if you're a production farm, you want to just make sure, right, that you're starting another set of tomatoes. So we do a full set of early tomatoes. We do a full set of late tomatoes. So we have tomatoes from June all the way through. I mean, we're still harvesting tomatoes, major, like large quantities. Thank goodness for Seven Springs. They bought hundreds of pounds of heirloom tomatoes from us for this fair, this weekend, okay? So label, consider sequential planting, so if something fails, you still got something going, okay? And that way you'll feel proud that you're having success. I want you to have success with this. So date and label. So I like to put, what I like to put on the label, we put where the seeds came from, which seed company, what the name of the seed was, the date that we started the seeds, the seed in the ground, and then we like to label, we use popsicle sticks, okay? You can buy them by the quantity. You don't have to eat 100 popsicles, okay? And then we label the date we transplant. So we have these markers. We just keep trying. Okay. Now, we've grown in these 4-inch pots, and now they're getting bigger, they're developing these little tomato plants, they're so beautiful. This is when you typically would take those 4-inch potted plants and put them in the ground. But we're too early. We're months ahead of the end of frost. We don't put ours in the ground. We put our early tomatoes in huge pots. Big plastic pots I'm going to show you. But here's what we do. You ready? Remember I told you the soil has to be a certain temperature. So we actually fill our pots with dirt from the outside and put the pots in the farmhouse or in the garage. And we let that soil come to room temperature way before we're getting ready to transplant. So that when we get ready to transplant our 4-inch potted tomatoes into that bigger pot, it's like it's going into nice warm soil. But in that soil, so we fill the pot, because it's a big pot, we fill it with some dirt from outside, just regular dirt. Then we mix in there some good soil, some good potting soil, and some soil amendments. These amendments are very key, and I would love for any of you, if you have extra amendments you find are critical for your tomatoes, to share with the audience here. But this is what we found, this is what we do. Of course, because we're taking just dirt from outside, we do add some nitrogen. And you can test your soil if you want to see what it needs. It depends. We already know kind of what our soil is lacking. Okay? We like to use kelp, which you can buy at the garden stores, okay, for good minerals and nutrients for the soil. And then we add agricultural gypsum. Is everyone familiar with this? Or is this new to you? This is absolutely key because your tomatoes need calcium, which it gets from the gypsum to prevent blossom end rot. Have you ever had blossom end rot on your tomatoes? And you're like, darn, why did that happen? It happened because you didn't have enough calcium. And all you have to do is put gypsum in the soil and you will never have blossom end rot. Isn't that amazing? So simple, okay? Then in each hole, and I learned this from the Women's Agricultural Network, we put a tablespoon of Epsom salt. We only do that for our tomatoes and peppers. It's not good, from what I understand, for other vegetables. Tomatoes and peppers really love the Epsom salt right in the hole, right before we put the plant in there. Okay? I am giving you the secret to the most delicious heirloom tomatoes right here, right now. Okay? I don't think you're going to hear these specifics anywhere else, because nobody wants to tell you how the secrets of them growing their famous heirloom tomatoes. But I'm telling you, because you're here today, and the people on Facebook. Okay. Now, one of the issues with tomatoes is late blight, or different variations, and other diseases of the leaves. How many people have had blight or diseases on their tomatoes? Yeah, just about everybody. Well, it's interesting because we investigated the organic recommendations, and it said to spray copper, which is an organic, you get organic copper spray. And I found it fascinating because when I told my father that we were told to spray copper on our tomato plants, he said, that's fascinating, that's exactly what my father, which is my grandfather, did in the old country. They actually had copper in these sprays, and they would spray copper, and I think possibly also on their grapes for their wine. I'm not positive about that, but I think he thinks they spray copper on all of his plants. So here's the thing. You don't want to overdo the copper, because you don't want to get too much copper in your soil, but you can't, don't worry about that. Like, people panic about that too much. But copper, if you spray it preemptively, and they recommend, if you know a big rain is coming, now remember, you're outside normally with your tomato plants, and blight is a bigger issue outside than it is in our high tunnel, in our greenhouse. Because that comes from the rain, and the moisture, and those blight spores are on the leaves, and the rain and moisture cause it to grow. And then also you have issues with the rain coming down and hitting the dirt and getting up on the leaves of your tomato plants. Are you familiar with all those issues, right? We don't have that big of an issue in our greenhouses because we're not using natural rain. We're actually watering. And that's one of the key things with our potted tomato plants. We water the pot. We're not watering the whole plant. So we actually are safer from disease, but we're not completely immune to disease. Because in that greenhouse, it also can be a little bit too warm and moist sometimes. And so we try to get airflow with fans and raising the sides, but still sometimes we still see powdery mildew, and I don't know what all the names of it. All I just know is it doesn't look great. We better handle it. But we found that when we preemptively spray our tomatoes with copper, we protect it from these diseases, especially if you're outside before a rain comes. The copper must be on the leaves and get them good, the top and the bottom of the leaves. Because if the spore hits that leaf and there's copper on it, it will not survive. Okay? Gypsum, fixing the blossom end rot. Copper, preventing disease. You fixed all your problems right there. So many people have problems with tomatoes, growing tomatoes. And right there solves two of the biggest issues, okay? Now, once these, and I'm going to show you a picture, once these tomato plants are growing in pots, and we're in pots, we do move them to the high tunnel, to the greenhouse. The pots we move. That's a project that day, but we move them in there. Because our high tunnel obviously is already a zone south from where we are here. And so we move the pots months before you're planting tomatoes outside. Our pots are in our high tunnel. And they're growing and growing, getting bigger every day. And as soon as we can, we start pinching the suckers. Is everyone familiar with that? Every tomato, and I don't know why this is, but they grow suckers. We always say out of the crotch, okay? So every time you have a stem, this main stem and a stem coming out, if you look in the crotch, there'll be a little leaf growing out of there. You want to pinch those off. Those are suckers, and what I understand is they can diminish the health and the vitality of the tomatoes and the tomato plant. So we walk around, and this is what's interesting I want to mention. You know, when tomatoes are out in the field, they often get ignored. This is what I found in our production farm. When we have the potted tomatoes in the greenhouse, and you're watering one at a time, you know, going through, and you can even put little irrigation things in there, but we go through and water them one at a time. It gives you an opportunity to look at each plant and say, oh, I need some suckers clipped. Right, as you're watering, you can almost do both at the same time, okay, as you go along. So they're getting more care, and they're getting more love when we're growing them this way. So let me show you. That's what it looks like. So we get these inexpensive pots. They have holes in the bottom from the grower supply. And fill them with dirt, gypsum, kelp, nitrogen, Epsom salts, get our tomatoes in there. And they're growing in our greenhouse. There's a question in the back.
How much salt do you put in the...
A tablespoon of Epsom salt in each hole.
Does spring water help?
Well, we are watering with spring water. That's all we have at our farm, and we're pretty lucky with that, right? I don't know what difference that makes. But, okay, but just, we don't know that, but what you do want to do is test your water. Right? Because some water could be more acidic, some water could be more alkaline. See if there's minerals in the water. You do want to take a look at that if you want to get really serious about growing. You're going to test your soil and you're going to test your water. And then you'll know what you're working with. And then you'll know if that water eventually might make the soil more acidic or not, and you know then to work with it. Does that make sense? But I do have to say, there's definitely a benefit to raising our produce with spring water versus city water. So city water goes to treatment plant and has all those chemicals in there. So try to get a filter if you can afford it, some kind of filter on your water. And is there another question? I saw a hand. Sulfur? Soft water.
Sulfur water.
Sulfur water. What is sulfur water? Is it in the water? Sulfur? Is that an issue or is that good? You're asking me? I do not know. Do you have sulfur in your water? Okay. Ooh, that sounds like it could be an issue. No? It's good. Excellent. Excellent. We'll have to look that up. Copper rods in the ground. And that keeps the spores away? Copper pennies? That keeps the spores off the leaves? Okay, there you go. I don't know how that would work, because they say the copper has to be on the leaves. But it works for you? Is that what you do?
No, yeah, okay.
Oh, because the spores are growing from the ground and then they get splashed up when the rain. Oh, interesting. Okay, copper pennies. Let's give it a try. I love it. Okay, so there's our pots, and here we are. Like, this is now months before any of you put a single tomato in the ground. We already got flowers coming, right, off our tomato plants, and that's good. No, it's crazy. We got pots everywhere. We've put every inch we can find a place, right? But we've got 3 greenhouses, 2 hoop house, high tunnels, and a greenhouse. Is that a question back there? And I want you to know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to hear you.
Okay, I'll talk loud. At what point do you put them into the greenhouse after you transplant them into the big pots?
We're not scientific with it, but once we plant it in the big pots, we still have them in the farmhouse for a while with the grow lights all over the place. And then once we feel good with the greenhouse out there in the winter time, being ready enough, and my farm manager will throw a thermometer in the high tunnel in the greenhouse just to see generally where we are. But remember, we don't care what the soil temperature is even in the greenhouse. Even if the soil temperature in the greenhouse is not where we need it to be, it doesn't matter. And this is our trick, because we already brought the soil temperature in the pots to where they need to be. And once we move those pots into the greenhouse, because it's in a greenhouse and the daylight coming through keeps that soil just right. Okay? So that's the key. Remember, the key is always the soil temperature, air temperature, water, airflow, amendments. If you just remember the key things and you're always keeping an eye on those key things each step of the way, you're good. I will have to look at our notes to see exactly what date we moved them into the greenhouse, but I'm telling you, we're not scientific with it. We mark it down, but we're just like, okay, these tomatoes need to be moved today. We're moving tomatoes. And we put them on a trailer and haul them to the greenhouse and unload them. And that is like major work, really good exercise. I never understood why people pay a lot of money to join a gym. They just need to come and help me on my farm. And we won't charge you for it. Okay? So, a lot of hard work. Now we got these pots. The plants are growing and growing. Our babies have now become young adults, and we're loving them. And they're now producing. And we've got the flowers turning into tomatoes. And before we know it, as June is going on and the sun is out and the warmth of the greenhouse, it's the perfect environment for those tomatoes to grow and ripen. And that is why we are ready to harvest late June, definitely. Yes?
Do you need to stake or cages or anything?
I cannot hear you. There's like noise back here, and I got this thing on, and I'm also a little bit...
Stakes or cages? Do you need stakes or cages?
Cages? Oh, stakes. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. We have bamboo stakes that we put in each pot. I forgot to mention that. Thank you. So we have these bamboo stakes we bought, thousands of them. And we tie up each individual. It's a little bit labor intensive. Now we are also doing sequential planting. So we've got our early tomatoes in pots. We then, because it's now June, and our second set of tomatoes that we started that go in the ground are now going in the ground, also in the high tunnel. So we have rows of potted tomatoes, and then we have rows in the ground. Those we actually use string and tie up to the beams, the posts that come across the hoop house. Okay? What do you use? I think the cages are super great for a home gardener.
Some of both.
Awesome. They're less labor intensive.
Cattle panel.
Yes. How do you do that?
With seed posts, you lift it about 8 inches off the ground, so the plant can grow 6, 7 feet tall, and then it just grows on the side of the panel, and then I just tie it.
Excellent. So they have a panel, and they're tying it up, almost like a trellis. Is that like a trellis almost? Excellent. Yes. Twine hanging down from the top. That's what we do on our... Johnny Seeds has little clips that you take the twine and clip it to the tomato plant. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're tying twine down from the beams of the hoop house, and we just tie them to the plant. Excellent. Yeah, you definitely want to tie them up. Let me tell you, we have, out of being short-staffed, one year. Some of the tomatoes just kind of like grew along the ground. We didn't get them tied up in time, and they still produce like crazy. The problem there is the tomatoes, if they're laying on the ground, they may have more of an issue being healthy in terms of getting them picked right. But even then, and my farm manager's grandmother, who's 90, she said they never tied up their tomatoes, but we definitely want to tie up our tomatoes. It's just a better, healthier environment. And also keep in mind that the low leaves, right, don't hesitate to clip those off too. It's the dirt, even with our water and hand water, it's the dirt getting on those leaves that then illness and disease can start developing. Yes? Arch form. Okay, an arch form, 4 feet to 5 feet apart. I'm repeating so we can hear you. Raised beds. So you have raised beds and the tomatoes come up over the arch. I bet that looks beautiful. You reach up and pick them. Green beans. Wonderful. I love it. I love it. Excellent. Okay, so we pick our tomatoes when they're ripe, right? We don't pick them before they're ripe. We just want them to develop the nutrient content and the flavor, and that's one of our secrets to famous heirloom tomatoes. And that's our secret to my Nana's heirloom tomato sauce. She didn't pick her tomatoes until they were ripe, and that's what she taught me, and that is why it's so outstanding. And I do recommend that you use little clippers, okay? Like if you're clipping them off, because you don't want to do too much damage to the stem because then disease can form. So be just thoughtful as you're going around. And we harvest, we put them in trays because we don't want to stack them, we don't want to get them damaged. And we don't wash our tomatoes. We might just wipe the dirt off them if there's some dirt because we don't want them to start to deteriorate with the water. And we deliver those trays to our restaurant customers, all nice and neat like that. Yes, question?
Well, this is one I don't.
Or comment.
I'm not trying to duplicate your sauce. But do you have a favorite tomato that you use for sauces?
Okay, my favorite tomato to use for sauce. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Drum roll, please.
Okay.
All of them.
Okay, then
I find that's the best. Okay, so here's what we do. We do not waste a single tomato. Remember, we're a little small commercial farm. Okay, so there's tomatoes that look pretty that we can sell. And then there's all the other tomatoes that aren't pretty enough to sell. Or they have a bruise or something. We don't waste a single bit. We cut off the bruised or the damaged pieces, right? And we chop them up and put them in our sauce. We will put every type of tomato in the sauce. And this, I think, I learned that from my Nana. They didn't waste anything. Okay? They were in a poor farm town. No waste. So cut off the bad parts. You put that whole thing in the food processor. Get ready for the sauce. We put cherry tomatoes in here. We put plum tomatoes in here. We put Amish paste in here. We put our indigo apple, our brandy wine, our German Johnson, and our Cherokee purple are all in this. And I like to purposely try to mix it all up. Like I'm trying not to do a batch of sauce with just Cherokee purple. I purposely take the whole mixture and purposely combine it in. And I think that's also why our sauce is so famous. Okay? It's just unique. People don't do that. Like the regular tomato sauce you buy at the store, I think is all plum tomatoes, right? And some tomato paste. Like that's fine, that's wonderful, that's delicious. But guess what? Sometimes I want something better, something more unique, something fabulous. And that's what this is. No question. Question, someone.
Yeah. How often water and how much?
How much what?
Water.
Water.
How water your plants, how much you give them. And it's
Okay. We are not scientific. So we go through and we try to evaluate. We almost look at the plant, look at the dirt. You do not want to overwater your tomatoes. Because what happens is, and it's common sense, you'll just get a feel. We almost like hit the hose on each pot. I know what I do, and I count to like 10. You know what I mean? And hit each pot. So we're not scientific. So you probably could look that up. But if we start overwatering, those tomatoes get too much water, right, as they're developing, and they'll actually split faster and things like that. Tomatoes like, believe it or not, hot and dry. And this group that we studied with from the Women's Agricultural Network, they actually have been a little bit underwatering their tomatoes more as they go forward. They've noticed that a little bit less seems to be good. But you'll notice you don't want the plants drooping.
No.
So just get a feel. In the pots, they need a little bit more water. Let me just mention that. You know that, right? When you put a plant on the pot on your back deck, you need to water it more aggressively than if it's in the ground. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you're doing early tomatoes and using pots to do it, they might need a little bit more water than what you typically.
I get mine out in April. I had it out in April 19th this year. As in a hot, dry, southeastern Washington.
We had a very mild winter this year.
Oh, we did. Ours was
Where are you from?
southeastern Washington State. Walla Walla.
Okay, I don't know what zone are you. You come all the way from the state of Washington?
Yeah.
Wow, did you guys? I love Washington. Way back out of college, I worked for Alcoa, and I went to Wenatchee, Washington, to install systems, and it was beautiful. Washington is beautiful. I don't know what zone you are. Are you near the water?
Yeah, I'm near water.
Like near the ocean?
No.
Oh, okay.
The ocean.
Oh, okay.
Rivers and.
Here, we get a really mean frost up through the end of May, and it would destroy your tomato plants. So, but that's excellent. So if you're already putting your tomato plants outside in April, you could even, with this technique, go even earlier if you wanted to. But when do you harvest tomatoes there in that part of the country?
I started harvesting not until 4th of July.
4th of July is not too bad. That's still a month earlier. That's a month earlier than here.
And I'm still going strong, but I completely cut the water off because I just want to stretch the plant out.
Sure.
Whatever's left on there, I want to hurry to ripen because, we've got the rest of September, but anytime in October, it can freeze and snap and.
Right. Okay. This is all based on our zone here and our temperature here, what I'm telling you. But if you just take your zone and your growing season and use the same concept to shift yours earlier, if you want them earlier. If you're already getting 4th of July tomatoes, that's awesome. Here, you know. What's that?
What's a really hot day here? I mean, does it get into triple digits?
Well, we didn't have any hot this summer, which is weird. But if we got a really hot summer, it's in the 90s. A few years we've had 100, but it's very rare. That was years ago. I bet that was 10, 12, 15 years ago we hit 100 once or twice. So if it gets in the 90s, it's hot here. This summer, I don't even know if we ever hit 90. We had a mild winter and a cool summer. It's been strange this year. Yes?
How big were the pots that you put your early tomatoes in?
Can you tell in that picture? It's not a 5-gallon bucket. You can use 5-gallon bucket. They're a little bit smaller than 5-gallon, maybe 2-gallon bucket, I would guess, would you say? But they sell them at the grower supply. They're like what you would buy a plant at the nursery. Those pots. Did you see that in that picture? Can I get back to
They
that?
look like they were five, that's what that.
Can you see those? You would buy like a blueberry plant or something at the greenhouse, your local greenhouse. They sell them at the grower supply. I'd say that's 2 to 2.5 gallons, about. But that's a common pot. You would see that everywhere. So whatever that is, you would see. Okay, after we harvest, this is another little thing that's kind of funny, and I don't know if I have a picture of that. Oh, there's another harvesting. This is what it looks like when we harvest in our trays. We use these trays because we don't want to smash them, and we kind of organize them by type. There's all kinds of crazy tomatoes. Do you see this picture of the harvested tomatoes? They're actually on the floor of our spring house. And our spring house actually has heat and air conditioning. So one summer that was a little bit hotter than normal, we harvested our tomatoes and put the trays in the spring house with the air conditioning on. We like to keep them a little bit cooler. Normally we just put them in our barn and the barn is cool enough and it's fine. But just keeping that in mind. You don't want to store your tomatoes at really, really hot temperature. If you can keep it 50 to 60 degrees somewhere, but you don't want to refrigerate them either, they'll start to lose flavor. So we actually figured out if we put them in our spring house with the air conditioning on before we deliver them to the chefs, then they just stay in perfect condition. So just a little other point on that. My little quote to leave you from Thomas Jefferson. I keep reading this because I'm hoping that it comes true. Agriculture is our wisest pursuit because it will in the end contribute most to real wealth. And that's what I'm talking about. When I saw my father's town, I felt they were rich. They were so rich. They had no money. But they lived a very rich life. Real wealth, good morals, and happiness. Remember, did I tell you the town that my father grew up in was just in the news in Italy about 3 to 4 months ago. We got a clip of it emailed from my uncle. They called the town Felice, which means happy, happiness. They found that the people from this town are the happiest in the whole country. Wow. Living, growing your own food, and you don't have to live in a poor farm town or even own a farm. But if you do grow some of your own food, work in the soil, work with Mother Nature, have the reward of enjoying your own canned tomato sauce in the middle of the winter from everything that you produced with your heart and soul all summer, and you grew it with love, that will heal you at every level. Thank you for joining me today. I hope I've contributed great value to you in attending my talk. Any more questions or comments for anybody? A picture of what? What do you want a picture of, sweetie? You mean the quote or the picture? Okay. You're like, oh, you know, you're the picture.
Well, they're going to the Heirloom talk at 3:30.
You get triple digits in June. Oh, you are. Oh, you're definitely in a different zone. Interesting. What the heat will. Have you ever tried shade?
3:30.
Okay, we use shade cloth in our eggplant. For some reason our eggplant in the field does not like these things. So we put shade cloth. Yes. And I would suggest that. I worked with Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center in Patagonia, Arizona, which is South Arizona. And they grow all kinds of food for the Rejuvenation Center. And they use a lot of shade cloth over, like they even have like almost like a tent of shade cloth over things because they have too much heat where they are. I would recommend that. It works amazing, and it's very inexpensive to buy. Yeah. Let me know how that works. You email me, because that's a good point. That's a good issue for people. I would like to know. Let me know at the end of next season if that helps you. Yeah.
Heirloom class.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to go back inside. We're going to go find Granny a pot.
3-inch soil blocks. Yes. Everybody what? Oh, yes. 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 Cloth thing, don't you? Okay. This soaks up the moisture in the cloth type. Wow. I don't know if we'd have enough diapers to use our commercial farm, but that would be, that's neat. Oh, interesting. All kinds of neat. You need to develop a commercial system that mimics that for people that are making thousands.
I'll meet you around.
Thank you so much. Be in touch with me, okay? Yeah, thank you. So good to see you again today. I appreciate it so much. Oh, yes.
I gotta remember to
How
tell
about this round? Say Chris Brown.
It's on my list. We haven't communicated on
I
everything.
think you can get off their website and actually call them for a high tunnel building plan. I think it's where we got that. They sell high tunnel supplies. They actually they'll give you a plan. We might go to a plastic plan, but we just got metal conduit from Home Depot and we got a vendor maybe from them. Because you want to get a post vendor to get that. Yeah. It's very easy to do. I was even able to do it myself. And we had a plan, and then we did that. But our next tunnel, our bigger high tunnel, we ordered from an official high tunnel company because it was big, monster high tunnel that can also be movable. So that was
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. It's fun. I love it. It's in my recipe book. I think the recipe might be on my website. The sauce is available at our booth if you want to. Yeah, what 2007.